What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Working on several different projects right now, but this video is going to pertain to the Audi that I purchased for my son. It's a 2002 Audi A4 1.8 liter turbo 5-speed Quattro, and I bought it because the clutch was messed up on it. So I don't know if I'm gonna pull the engine or if I'm gonna just pull the transmission and check the clutch, because I need to re-gasket it and everything, but I also need to have the car ready for my son for when he gets his license. And I got a lot of other projects going on right now, so I may just get it running with the clutch the way that it is, and then tear it apart later and do the timing belt and water pump and all that stuff in a month or two after I get some of these other projects done. So I'm not exactly certain what direction I'm going to go with this. You'll figure it out as I start going through the video. Well, I went looking for another air box to replace the one up here, just because I thought I had one that didn't have anything wrong with it. But instead, I wanted to get rid of this pile, which is exactly what I think it is a pile of crap. But I wanted to get rid of that and put a factory radio back in here. And I have a mint condition Symphony radio downstairs. So I actually have 3 of these. So I'm going to put this in here until I get my RNSE serviced, because it's got a little bit of a power glitch on it. That's why I've got the one in my car instead of the one that's on my shelf. So I'm going to take the ones on my shelf and get it serviced, but I'm going to run this factory Symphony radio until I get the RNSE in here. So, as I'm hoping you'll be able to see, this gasket right here is blown out. That's the exhaust gasket. Doesn't even look like the exhaust is tightened all the way down. So that would explain why that shit's blown out. So I have to remove the downpipe anyway. But I think what I'm going to do is I think I'm just going to pull the transmission, just because I don't want to open a big can of worms on this thing right now. I need a car that runs as a backup, because I need to do some serious work to that thing, just because I'm over 100,000 miles since I built it, and I need to redo the suspension, the brakes. I want to put my other 2.7 in there, and I need to fix the transmission, and the clutch is starting to go out in it. That's my biggest concern, is the clutch is starting to go out. And I need to have a backup car in case the clutch fails in that thing, so that I can drive it until whenever. But I also need to get this car done for my son. So these are very trying times for myself. But anyway, I'm gonna more than likely just pull the transmission, which means I'm gonna pull the downpipe right here. So it'll be 3 17mm bolts right here. Disconnect the O2 sensor. Both O2 sensors are hooked up on that side of the car underneath the water neck, or the water overflow tank. And then disconnect those bolts down there. They're going to be a 13 on both sides. Typically it'll have weld nuts on it. This is not an OEM part, so it doesn't have the weld nuts on it. So this one's got 13mm nuts on front and back. And then let's see. Yeah, then I should be able to pull all the transmission bolts, and the slave cylinder. Slave cylinder's held in with, I believe it's a M6 Allen bolt. I'll confirm when I get under there. It could be a 13mm, but I'm pretty sure it's a 6mm Allen bolt. And then you just take that bolt out, and then you pull the the slave cylinder away from the transmission, and then you pull it back, and it'll release off of the clutch fork. Once that's off, the bolt holding the line to the slave cylinder is the same bolt that's holding the slave cylinder in. So everything will come off with that one bolt. And then you need to take the drive shaft off, take both of the front drive shafts off. They are 12-point, internal 12-point sockets, or triple squares. And I think it's an M12 triple square. And then I know that the differential, or the drive shaft to front differential bolts are either an M6 or a, they should only be an M6, but they can be a T45, I want to say. 99% of them that I've dealt with have been M6 Allen head. But that should be all I have to take out, and then all the bolts around the transmission are a 16mm. Okay, so just as I assumed, the airbox is broken, the freaking end of it's broke off, and then the whole bottom, the whole back side of it's busted out. So I'm gonna have to replace that. I had a feeling it was because this looked all jacked up. That looks like a brake caliper bolt for not this vehicle. The hell's it doing in here? All right, anyway. So yeah, in order to remove the air box, you got to disconnect the intake tube. There's another vacuum tube that's hooked up to a line that goes across the air intake, and then you got to disconnect the evap purge valve. And when you disconnect, and the secondary air injection, you squeeze these two and pop it off, and then you can pick the whole thing up. The wiring harness has to go behind it to get it to clear, but you can pull that thing right out, and then you got pretty good access to the exhaust so that you can get to everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect the exhaust, get it going, and get that side disconnected, and then I'll climb underneath and start doing my work underneath. All right, guys, so start removing this transmission. Need to remove all the bolts around here. I already removed the lower ones. Starting to try and remove the upper ones. And I had to remove this cover. My wrench wouldn't fit down in there. So you got a 6mm Allen bolt here, 6mm Allen bolt here, and then another one right on the very top. Now, whoever last worked on this car, which is the mechanic shop that had the lien on it, they didn't have that top bolt right there. And this holds a heat cover over top of a component on the transmission. It covers up this. So missing that top bolt's kind of important. I'm gonna dig through my hardware and find a replacement bolt and put one back in there when I put it back together. But I'm gonna go ahead and remove this CV axle, remove this CV axle, and get both of those separated. Then I'm gonna separate the entire exhaust. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna drop the exhaust because I need to replace the resonator here, and I need to replace both mufflers back there. So I'm gonna cut the shit anyway. So I'm probably gonna cut there so that I can replace those pieces. And then I gotta unbolt the exhaust. Right here, you can either do that upper bolt or the lower bolt. I'm gonna do the upper bolt so I take the whole bracket and everything with it. That way I can pull the entire exhaust out. Once I get the exhaust out, then I gotta take the starter bolts out. There's one of them. Well, there's one of them, and the other one's up top. Take both of those out. And the starter is bolted to the block with that bracket, so you don't have to remove the starter. All you gotta do is take out that bolt there, that bolt there. Sometimes there's a bolt here. Obviously, they didn't put it back in because it's one of the hardest bolts to put back in. I freaking hate when mechanics don't put in the damn hard bolts just because they're... that irritates the crap out of me. So if that's the case, I'm already missing 2 bolts, and this came from a mechanic shop. This is probably not going to be a freaking good repair. I'm going to look inside of here when I get the transmission off, and I'm probably going to find some shit that ain't right just from the repair. But we'll see how it goes. But I am going to wind up removing the cross member. 17mm here, 17mm here. It might be an 18, I can't remember. It's been a while since I took it off. But I'm going to remove the transmission mount, which is I think a 14 or a 13. I think it's a 13. Those 2 nuts right there, and then take out these 3 bolts right here. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Take those out and these out, and then that whole bracket will come off. You have to support the transmission when you take that off so that it doesn't freaking tip down. But and then I also have to disconnect the drive shaft right here. All right, guys, so I just want to add this little caveat to this. The only difference, there's not a lot of differences between the V6 6-speed and the 4-cylinder 5-speed. The big differences are going to be the exhaust, because obviously there's only 1 exhaust pipe on this one, whereas there's 2 on that one. The way that the shifter hooks up. This is an older model, so this is a 2002, so it actually has the speed sensor in the transmission. So you got to disconnect that. The clutch slave cylinder mounts the same, transmission mounts the same, cross member mounts the same. All the rest of it's basically the same. CV axles bolt up the same way. Now the bolts are different, but the sizes of the tools that you use to take the bolts out are exactly the same. So all your transmission bolts should be a 16. This thing has had every damn mismatched bolt that it can have in it. Half of the bolts in the transmission bell housing were not tight. The CV axle bolts, 3 of them on the driver's side were not tight. The freaking exhaust is one solid piece all the way from the freaking header all the way out the back of the car. So I'm going to have to cut the damn thing to get it out of the car. So whoever did this work, I'm not going to say their name because I don't know if they did this work or if the customer was fucking with it after they messed with it. But it looks like they did it and they didn't do a very good job, and it's missing hardware all over the place on the transmission bell housing. I'm already missing 4 bolts when I started taking the bell housing bolts out. So I'm going to go through my bolt bin, and hopefully I've got the correct bolts to put back in this thing. If not, I'm going to have to go buy some, because I'm not going to leave it like that. This is my son's car. I'm not going to have him running around with half of the freaking bolts in the bell housing missing, which could be attributed to why the clutch failed in this damn thing. So we'll find out once I get the clutch off of here. But essentially everything's going to be the same as my other video for replacing the clutch without removing the transmission. I am going to drop the transmission out of this one. The only difference is instead of leaving it up on the jack, I'm just going to lower it down because I don't have the clutch. So I'm not going to leave the transmission suspended while I'm waiting on the clutch to show up. Because I haven't bought any parts for this car because I want to pull it apart and see what I need to replace. If the flywheel's still good and the pressure plate's still good and just the clutch disc is shot, then I've got a clutch disc downstairs. I ain't got to spend any money on it. If it's the pressure plate and the clutch disc are both messed up, then or if the flywheel included in that is messed up, then I'm going to have to buy a whole nother clutch kit. So I'm working on trying to slide underneath this freaking car. But I'm working on the shifter linkage. It's going to be hard to see. Let me see if I can get the... There we go. So now the flash is on. So this is the bolt for your actual shift rod. And I believe it's a 10 millimeter. And then you've got an Allen head bolt in the center here. And I believe it's an 8 millimeter. I'll verify once I start taking them off. Had to take the exhaust bolt off or the exhaust bracket bolt off. And now I'm going to have to cut the exhaust so that I can get it out of the way. I went ahead and removed the 2 nuts off the transmission mount. I've got all the bolts out of the bottom of the transmission. So I got this one. This one was missing. I got this one, and then like this one was loose. This one was loose. Both of these over here were loose. The ones on the top aren't even in there. These bolts are wrong for the starter. They're 2 different size bolts and they're not supposed to be. So I'm going to try and get all this squared away and get it the way it's supposed to be. But I've already disconnected the slave cylinder. So there's the slave cylinder, and the slave cylinder bolts in right there. So that's the bolt for the slave cylinder. It's a 6 millimeter Allen head bolt. And then that is the reverse light switch, and then that is the transmission speed sensor. So I'm disconnecting the drive shaft back here. I've got all the bolts loose except for the top one. Once I get that drive shaft bolt out and I disconnect the exhaust, I'll be able to drop the freaking cross member right here. So this cross member right here, and then I'll be ready to pull the transmission. All right, guys, so I just got the transmission separated. And the clutch disc is completely broken. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove the pressure plate. Throwout bearing looks good. Sounds good. Definitely has a new flywheel and a new pressure plate. So I'm gonna see how bad this clutch disc fucked up the pressure plate and the throwout or the flywheel. And if it didn't really mess it up, then I'll just use the disc that I have in my shop. All right, guys, this is a little unfortunate as far as I'm concerned. They have switched this flywheel out for a single mass flywheel. The clutch engagement is horrible. I understand if you're trying to race a damn thing, single mass is the way to go. But for a daily driver, putting a single mass on a freaking all-wheel drive car is the worst goddamn thing you could ever do, in my opinion. You guys may disagree with me, but that is a horrible freaking thing to put on a damn daily driver. But New dual mass flywheel is almost 600 bucks for a freaking factory Audi one. And I'm kind of broke right now. So I'm probably just gonna deal with this single mass flywheel and put a new disc in it and go with it, even though I hate single mass flywheels on a freaking all-wheel drive car. I'll eventually switch it out when I get a little bit better financially. But I'm still hurting from my divorce. It'd probably be another 2 years before I actually have any expendable income. I'm living way beyond what my paycheck provides. Just trying to pay bills and shit. So it's kicking my ass. But yeah, I'm gonna go see if I've got a flywheel or a pressure plate that'll work, but I'm gonna flip this around and show you what he did to this freaking clutch plate. So I have never actually seen this happen before in person. I've seen it happen on the internet and shit, but I've never seen it in person. This dude must have been ripping the absolute shit out of this freaking clutch, because it completely shattered the entire inside. And it sucks because that's a brand new clutch. That dude was dogging the shit out of this car. So, and then there's rust on the flywheel, which doesn't make any sense or on the pressure plate, because it's a brand new pressure plate, brand new flywheel, and the pressure plate and the flywheel both have rust on them. Doesn't make any sense. But I don't know how long ago this was replaced. I bought the car because of a mechanic's lien, so I mean, this thing could have been sitting for fucking a while. But yeah, I'm gonna go see if I've got a clutch disc that'll work for this, and then put it back together. Well, unfortunately, the clutch disc that I have as a spare is a bigger diameter than this one. But this is an actual dual mass. And I've got the pressure plate and flywheel, but this is off of B5S4. So I don't know if it'll fit on the 1.8T. I'm gonna do a little bit of research and see if I can put that dual mass on that 1.8T, because I hate single mass flywheels. Well guys, I just spent $300 on a clutch that I don't even want, but to get the correct dual mass flywheel and clutch disc and all that, it's almost $1,200. And I don't have that kind of money right now to be spending on my son's clutch, even though it's the correct thing to do. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to stick with this stupid single mass flywheel. And it seems like that's all that the auto parts stores offer. None of them carry the dual mass flywheel in stock anywhere in Atlanta, which is kind of crazy to me. But anyway. All right, guys, I got the whole car back together yesterday. Got the clutch installed, got CV axles bolted back in, rear drive shaft back in, cross members back in. I think the only thing that I don't have back in the car is the exhaust and the air box, because I can't put the air box in until I get the exhaust back in. And I don't want to put the exhaust back in until I get a catalytic converter, because I live in an emissions county and I have to have, it has to be able to pass emissions. So I have to have a functioning catalytic converter and O2 sensors and all that. That's why my twin turbo V6 still has stock cats and O2 sensors and all that stuff, because it has to be emissions legal. So that's gonna prevent me from getting the car done today, but unless I can find one local. I haven't looked yet, but if I can get a catalytic converter for it today, I'll probably still run the straight pipe exhaust, just because I can't afford to buy mufflers and everything for it right now. And I'll just deal with it, even though it sounds like absolute crap. I'll just freaking deal with it, whatever. But I need to get it running so that I can actually hook up my Rostec stuff, so that I can see what all is going on with the car, because I haven't run a scan on that car at all yet. So I don't know any other issues that vehicle has. I know the radio was messing up on me, and it was an aftermarket pile, freaking piece of garbage radio. I don't like any of those aftermarket radios. They're all junk. At least the ones that they make for the B6. Every one that I've ever had any experience with the B6 has been absolute garbage. They're not even worth the freaking money. They sound like trash. The radio reception is absolutely horrible. And most of the time they're glitchy when they have Apple CarPlay and all that stuff. They haven't been very good. Now that could have changed since the last time that I've used one. But that unit that was in that car was an older unit, and it's a pile of shit. So, like I said, I'm going to leave the Symphony radio in there until I get the RNSE serviced, and then I'll put the RNSE in there. And I just got to scan it and see if there's anything, because when I crank the car, it tells me that a bunch of lights are out and they're not out. And so I think there may be something going on with the comfort control module. So I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into that and see what's going on there. So I still got a lot more work to do to this car, but I'm going to continue digging into it and see what else I find. So unfortunately, when I was putting the transmission back in, I broke this heater hose connector on the back of the engine block. I made sure that the rear coolant flange was not messed up, but it snapped the barb off right at the end of the fitting. Turns out Summit has a Dorman replacement part in stock right down the street, or at least the computer says that it does. So I'm gonna go see if I can get it, and hopefully I'll be able to get this car going today. All right, guys, I got lucky, and Summit right down the street had the part that I need. Trying to get it to focus on the part number, but it's 800-319, and that is a replacement coolant fitting for the heater core hoses. All right, guys, so I got the whole motor and transmission back together. I'm waiting on, I ordered a new catalytic converter for this thing because I live in an emissions county in the Atlanta area. I have to be able to pass emissions. So got a new catalytic converter, should be here tomorrow. I did, miraculously, I found a APR stealth exhaust like I wanted. Got really freaking lucky and found some guy in South Carolina selling one. I don't have it yet, but one of my former coworkers lives right down the street from that guy, and he's supposed to go try and pick up the exhaust today. So hopefully I'll have that exhaust today. But I've got new brakes on it. Fixed the coolant line, filled the coolant system up. Got the clutch in there. Everything's ready to go. I'm gonna run it with the test pipe and the exhaust cut off, just so that I can test it, make sure the clutch is working correctly and everything. And then I'll install the catalytic converter tomorrow, and hopefully have the rest of the exhaust this weekend. And then I'll swap out the exhaust for the APR exhaust. But I'm gonna try and get this thing registered before Friday. So wish me luck. All right, guys, I'm currently trying to fix these Depo taillights that were on my son's car. I'm gonna put them on my car. I went to remove my my passenger side taillight on my car, and the whole damn taillight snapped in half. But the problem with these Depo taillights is these original resistors. You can see they're all cooked, cracked. This one as well, it's cracked on the side. And the parking light was blinking, and I was getting all kind of error codes on the instrument cluster. So I put these resistors that I bought from Walmart for 15 bucks. They're Sylvania. I'll flip it around and show you if I can get it to focus. There we go. 12 volt DC, 6 ohm. They're 15 bucks at Walmart. This is the package that I got. Load equalizer. So I already hooked it up, tested it. I didn't solder anything because I wanted to test it first. Now that I've verified that it fixes it, I'm gonna go ahead and solder these and put heat shrink on those connections, and then I'll go ahead and cut that one and go ahead and replace it too, because you gotta have 4 of them. So the way this works is both of them on one side are hooked together. So you can see these 2 wires are hooked together, and they go to the white one. And then the other side of each one of them goes to a green wire. So this one goes green and white, and this one goes green. All right, guys, so I was trying to replace the taillight on that car last night. And when I went to remove the taillight, the whole side of the taillight broke out. So when I pulled this part out, this whole corner right here broke off all the way up the entire side of the lamp. And I got a pretty short temper, and I smashed it on the ground. I just completely fucking tossed it and smashed it. So, but the circuit board's still good. So I put the circuit board in the car, Now I got to replace the light, but I had to replace it anyway because it broke. So I just shattered it because I was pissed. But I got that light in here. I got this circuit board in here. And when I turn on the car now, I don't get any warnings in the car. Everything seems to be working good. It looks like it has a stage 1 tune in it, according to the Ross Tech. I don't know who did it, but it says stage 1 tune on it, which is not normal. Normally it says a Volkswagen number or an Audi number, but this one says stage 1 tune. So I don't know who's done what to it, but it's got a tune in it. There's no boost gauge in it, so I'm gonna have to put a boost gauge in it and see what's going on. But I got the catalytic converter. I got a new hood strut for it. So now the hood actually holds itself open and I don't have to use that stupid freaking broom anymore. So got that squared away. I did put the exhaust and the intake and everything back on it so that I could run it and check it with the Ross Tech. But now I'm going to put the catalytic converter on here. I still haven't replaced the airbox. I haven't found one yet, but I'm going to go get it emissions inspected with the broken airbox. It'll still pass. So it looks like everything is actually tuned out of it except for the O2 sensors. It's got to read it's just got to see that they're there. So I should just be able to do like one drive cycle and get the O2 sensors going and I'll be good to go. Or in the state of Georgia, you can have one that's reading incomplete and everything else can be reading ready and you're good to go. So I may just go ahead and get it tested and see what happens. Now, because this thing in theory should pass, even if the O2 sensors aren't reading, I technically shouldn't have to replace or put the catalytic converter on here, but the car has to pass a visual inspection. And I also would like to have a catalytic converter on here. I don't need to run one without a catalytic converter. I do eventually want to get a high flow cat, but I don't have the money for it right now, so I just bought a regular cat. So I will wind up putting a high flow cat on here, but I'm actually probably going to save the tune that's in here and dump it out and put a factory 2002 tune in here because I have it from my original blue car that I had. And that way I can just run it as a stock setup. I don't want to run whatever's in here. I don't know what's in here. So I don't want to run the risk of damaging the engine because it's got a catalytic converter on it that the tune is not written for, because it could really mess up the motor if it's written for a tune without a cat, or it could melt the cat. I don't want it to do that either, because then I risk damaging the motor from the material of the cat going back into the engine. So, or overheating the valves and these AMBs are notorious for freaking burning valves and cracking heads. So I'd rather avoid that if I can. But anyway, well guys, I thought I had everything done on the car. I managed to get the exhaust back together. Got the catalytic converter installed. Did basically everything that needed to be done to get the car ready to pass emissions. Went and drove it around, and I'm getting a P1931 for the cooling fan control module, and it won't pass if the damn check engine light's on. So now I got to go find the freaking fan control module before I can even get this thing emissions inspected so that I can get it registered. So I'm probably just going to go ahead and end the video here. I'm going to wind up doing a separate video on replacing the cooling fan control module. Probably be a short or a reel, just because it's super easy to replace. But I'm going to have to go find a cooling fan control module, swap it out, and then carry on about my business. But I got to get that before I can get it inspected and registered. So but I got the clutch fixed, radio swapped out. I do have some issues with brake lights and whatnot because whoever had this cut the rear shelf out of the back of the car, so the center mount brake light's broken. So I'm gonna have to find another replacement brake light for there. And I got a burnout fog light, so I got to replace that. But other than that, I don't have any other warnings on the car. Everything's working good. Coolant temp's working good. Clutch feels good. Drives good. I hate those freaking wheels because they shake a little bit. And I know it's because they're not the right hub diameter for those spindles. So I'll probably wind up trying to find some different wheels. But I don't know. That'll be something that I deal with later. But if y'all like what you saw in this video, or if it helped you out in any way, Please, like always, like, comment, share, subscribe. I'm working on the dashboard for the Veloster. I've got a lot done to it, but I'm not going to post an update on the Veloster until I get the dash completely, at least completely sanded down and in primer and fit into the car. I've got everything fit. I've got all my final layers of fiberglass on it. I've got everything fit. I just got to put it into the car and fit the center console, and then scuff everything up and primer it, and then refit it into the car, and then I should be complete. So hopefully I'll have a video on that by the end of this weekend. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch y'all in the next video. Have a great one.